In the book of Jeremiah, we have a dialogue between God and the prophet, which shows the intimacy between them. This continues to highlight that the moment of the calling supposes an experience of God which does not end with the calling, but rather continues throughout the life of the prophet. Jeremiah, like Ezekiel and Isaiah, receives a calling, but this calling is also accompanied by a vision. In Jeremiah, we have two very distinct points that we must comprehend and apply in our lives. The first is the internal life of prayer and contemplation. The prophet is dedicated to God, not just in his outward service, but gives time and opportunity for God to speak to him. Second, the prophet is faced with many tribulations and is faced with unending hostility for speaking the word of God. Jeremiah shows that the job of a prophet is not just to be a messenger, because a messenger would have abandoned his post. Rather, Jeremiah is steadfast in his mission and calling from God, staying with the people even through his trial by the very priests of the temple who were meant to be the ones preaching the words of God. He also receives banishment from the temple. He is arrested and physical harm is done to him. And he even is left to die. Through all this, Jeremiah stays the path of righteousness in delivering his message to the people of God. Jeremiah's message recalls to the Jews as well as to us the covenant that God has with humanity, the fact that he will always be with the people. But the prophet warns of two violations that have and can continue to tear at the covenant with God. First is idolatry, when we put other things in front of God, when other matters or things become God themselves for us. And second is injustice, when we are not just towards the poor or those who are placed in our care, which, as we see Christ later telling us, is our neighbor, and our neighbors are all the sons and daughters of God.